A story about a couple that met in Sioux Falls. My dad was from northern Minnesota and raised on a farm and moved to Chicago, followed his brothers. Family of 7, and there's 4 brothers, and his brothers had learned the tile trade. And he followed them in and he learned the tile trade, and they traveled all over the country doing tile work with different companies. And my mother moved from west of the river out by Phillip from a ranch, went to business school, and she ended up in Sioux Falls, and they met at a rooming house. They both were staying. And eventually got married. And well, my dad, when he came to Sioux Falls, he had a bag of tools, and that was basically about it. And he came here by train, and he liked it because when he got off the train and he was walking down the street, everybody said hello. And he thought, gee, I must look like somebody that lives here, because they're all saying hello to me. And he got involved with Fred Haldy, who was a plastering contractor back then, and a big one. And Fred did a lot of, like, the VA hospital and stuff. And Fred talked Dad into, he says, I'll back you. You get a tile job, and I'll pay for the material, COD, and get you started. And so that's the way it started. And he'd do a job, get a check, take it to Fred. But there were tough times back then. It was in the early 30s. Well, we say 1932 is when he actually started contracting on his own. And he was meagerly successful for years. Sometimes he didn't have kind of a heartbreak story. He didn't have enough cash to go buy gas for his little truck. He had like a Model A. So he'd put his tools in a wheelbarrow and wheel them over to the job, wherever it was in town, if you can imagine.
There's a story that Ruth told us, how they, in the early days, were having a tough time, and they were sitting at the kitchen table, and it was one of those tables that had some linoleum on it, and it was worn, and Ruth was picking at it with her fingers, and she lifted it up, and there was a $10 bill under there. And the $10 bill, when they started, was a lot of money, and she told that, I heard it many times. And then a friend of mine tells about the time they tiled a bathroom, and the tile was delivered on the job, and Ray took a bus out and carried his tools on his back. Now, that was before my time, but this is related to me, and I believe that it was true.
Amazing thing about my grandmother and my grandfather is they were a dynamic duo. Both of them had gone through the Depression, and they'd seen the the effects of the bank collapse and all that. Both basically relied purely on their hard work ethic and their smarts to just to seize the opportunities when they presented themselves. I don't know if anybody's mentioned the story about my grandfather yet, of how he actually went from being just a simple tile setter to having a crew, but that was actually an accident. He was in town, was working the market here in Sioux Falls back in the 30s, and getting his jobs going, and he had a allergic reaction to Portland cement. His arms blew up. The doctor told him, "You're done setting tile."
Ray Sr., when he developed his allergy, he first went to his in-laws to elicit help to get these jobs done. And so he kind of became the leader and the contractor, and they became the workers and taught them how to set the tile and run the jobs. And they in turn would bring their brothers in, or another relative or a friend, and grew the crew from there.
With the help of my grandmother, he was going to run the crew, she was going to run the finances, and within 10 or 15 years, they had the biggest tile contracting operation between Minneapolis and Omaha.
What I learned from Ruth and Ray was, you know, the family orientation, but hard work more than anything. I learned hard work. Ruth told me stories about how they started off on the back porch of their house and with her husband and her brother-in-law.
At that time, the office was in the back bedroom of our house, and we had a single stall garage, and that was the warehouse. And then eventually he built a real office in a warehouse on 6th and West. That building's still there. It's a yellow tile front building. A lot of people remember it. So that's what started it.
Ray taught me to be honest in business, to do more than you should do, more than you could do. But he was a tough taskmaster, but he did what had to be done. And I think that Ray taught me a lot about that. And the employees he had were all good, honest people. And they liked to work hard, and every one of them gave me a piece of themselves, every one. And Ray and Ruth especially. Ruth was not a silent partner in that business. She was a very strong and honorable lady. And Ray ran the estimating properties, and Ruth ran the office. And like I say, she was a good taskmaster. And she taught me a lot. I'll never forget her.
There was always a lot of talk about my grandmother and how she got through the Depression, and our business, how that affected our business and how it influenced our business, and down to the point where she would actually have the guys bring cut tiles back off the job and put them back in the warehouse, because those could be used on the next job, you know. So we didn't throw anything away for many, many years.
When I first started working for Ray Syverson Sr., I was a tile setter tender, which helped the tile setters. And I did that for about 3 years. And in 1954, I became an apprentice tile setter, and I worked at that for a number of years till I got my tile setter's card. I started out at 90 cents an hour, and I worked my way up into higher pay brackets. And
Like I said, he was my first exposure to a small businessman, and he told me with hard work and honesty and a good job, a good product, he could succeed. So I think that's what he taught me.
I know he was a hard worker. They both were. I related to that a lot, and the relationship they had was so good because I always remember how he gave my mother credit for most of our success, which wasn't entirely true, but that's the relationship they had, which was a wonderful thing to grow up with. And I kind of had tile for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all my life. You know, that's the way it was with our family. We'd sit down to a meal and talk about the family business every night. And when I got married, we had to kind of change that because it wasn't appreciated so much by everybody else, and rightfully so, yeah.
The one key thing I learned that really relates to the business from my mother was to balance work and home. And her situation growing up with my dad and my grandmother and my grandfather, always at the dinner table talking about tile, and she was not involved in the business. And so she was always, you know, trying to get everybody to talk about something family related. And always found that a little challenging. So growing up in our house, she always made it clear that, you know, when you got home at night, we start talking family and, you know, put the business away. And that's one of the things that I guess from my mother that really has helped me balance work and family business.
I've been with the company 30 years. I started May, I believe it was the 7th, 1977. And I was looking for work. Found the ad in the paper and went out and interviewed with a little old lady, the sweetest little old lady I've ever seen in my life. Very quick-witted, very intelligent. I didn't know who she was. She introduced herself to me as Ruth.
Yeah, my grandmother was an amazing woman. She really was. Affected a lot of people, and you know, even to this day, I get people that remember her and have a story or two, and have nothing but positive things to say about her.
Walking up the steps of the building, and this tall, dark-haired gentleman was coming down the steps. He stopped. I said hi. He said, "Are you Nancy?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he reached out and shook my hand and said, "I'm Ray Syverson." He proceeded to interview me on the steps of the building. And after our interview was done, he said to me, and these were his exact words, "When can you start?" I said, "Well, I think I can start Monday." And he said, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're hired because Mother likes you." So right then and there, I knew, you know, who that lady was, and she became my friend, my mentor. Everything I know about the business, I learned from her.
I was around it so much and around them so much that, you know, I just, I noticed how they looked at things and how they treated people, and how they, how honesty was so important.
To my grandfather, I wish I really would have got the chance to work with you. Through all the stories that I've heard over the years, you were very well respected, and I still to this day get compliments about the way you handled your business.
So he was sort of like a father image to me. I was young, and like I say, I had no experience, and he sort of took me under his wing, and Ruth too. They were both strong people.
You do over the years appreciate working with people that are that. And Ray was one of those, and there were others that we worked with too that fit that same category. And I respect the work they do. I respect the work of most construction groups, and I respected the work that Syversons did.
And then one of the things I haven't adopted very well from their philosophy, and I don't know if I should admit this or not, but they were pretty old-fashioned. They'd both come up during the Depression. So you don't go in debt. And you don't have anything, you don't buy anything until you got the cash. And the first building he built, he saved for years to build that building and paid cash for it. And it was $50,000 at the time. Bill Bruns Construction built it for him. And the same thing with A Avenue. We looked at that property and we bought it, the company did, and well, that's that. Now we got to save up enough to build the building. And so they really just, well then when I got married, my Lutheran pastor says, we had a prenuptial meeting, my wife and I, and he said, now you folks don't wait till you got the money to buy what you want. Don't be afraid to go in debt. Wow, I told that to my dad. He just came unglued. Yeah.
We had a customer come in and picked out a color of tile, and we put in the wrong